So what I wanted to demonstrate today was just a really simple transfer technique using a sheet of acetate. Now this, I'm gonna do them on 12 by 12, just because that way I can use them. I do more scrapbooking than card making, but by all means, you can take your sheet of acetate and cut it down to, you know, like a 4 by 6 or whatever size you want, and you could be making card backgrounds, or this can be altered to whatever size or type of project that you are wanting to work on. But what you need for this project is acetate or some sort of non-porous slick surface. Acetate though is a really nice option. Some acrylic paints, a paintbrush, and some water. So I have done 2 examples just to sort of show you the potential, but again, obviously there are just infinite ways in which to take this technique and make it your own, layer it, build it, do who knows what. So this one, I've just sort of created a circle shape with a few different colors, layered them on top of one another, and given this sort of, it makes it almost look like a more watercolory kind of look. And then I'm a sucker for a rainbow, so I also did this example, and this is just painted strips back and forth in a rainbow pattern. And then I wanted to see, like, you know, lots of times if you're using paints and things like that over a stencil or something like that, you can get duplicate uses out of it. So I took the acetate and created this background, and then I re-spritzed it with water, and it did give me this really nice, like if you wanted a softer, more subtle look, like it is really nice, but it is quite faint. So it's a very faint finish on the second print, but again, depending on what you're working on, that could be really nice. So I do like not wasting and getting, you know, as much as I can out of any given mess that I start to make. So it's kind of cool that you can create a second background out of this, and that is what I'm going to show you. So again, I learned this one. I like to give my sources here. I love Vicky Boutin. She's one of my favorite crafters. And so this is a technique that I found on her YouTube channel, and she made a suggestion, and I think is a very smart suggestion. This is the type of project, like if you're messy like me, this is the kind of project where you want to sit down and make a bunch of backgrounds at one time, right? You're going to pull out your paints, you're going to pull out your acetate, and you're going to background up a storm. This is not a sit down and make this one background and then go finish that page. Like, to me, you're sitting down and you're doing prints and you're making backgrounds, because it is a little bit messy, but it is super fun and super worth it. So without further ado, I am going to set down my sheet of acetate and show you how it's done. So it is pretty straightforward, but I will go ahead and show you. So I have my collapsible water cup here. I've got a really crappy, but it doesn't really matter, paintbrush. I have a couple misters so that if my paint dries a little bit before I'm done finishing, I can just spritz it to keep it wet for the transfer. And my paints. So I'm going to start with the circle example that I did, and for that one I used the color. So these are all distress paints, but any acrylic paint works. So I like the Tim Holtz distress paints, and I'm really used to this color family. I use his products for the inks and the sprays and the paints and everything. So I chose to use Tim Holtz distress paints, but by no means do you have to. You can use any acrylic paint that you have access to. But I used for this one Seedless Preserves, that's the dark purple, Shaded Lilac, which is a light purple, and Mermaid Lagoon, which is like a really nice vibrant blue. I started with the darker purple, so that's the Seedless Preserve. Just gave it a good shake, and then I just picked a spot on my mat and put a plop of paint down. This one's getting a little bit emptier, so it'll take me a second. And once I have as much paint as I want down, I'm going to wet my paintbrush so that this goes the distance. And I am just going to spread it to my little heart's content. Now, the one thing to keep in mind when you're doing this is you don't want, like when you start spreading, you'll be able to see there are spots where the paint is, like, for lack of a better word, it's blobbing up, like there's globs of paint. You want to make sure that all of the blobs of paint have been spread out. You don't want any chunks, because then when you go to transfer, it's just going to sort of smush the paint rather than give you the look that you're going for. So really the only rule is to make sure that there are no blobs. And once you're happy with your first layer, you can go ahead and add your second. So then I went in with my Mermaid Lagoon, and I just put a shot of that down. Just keep on spreading and layering. Same thing, you want to just make sure that it's nice and flat and smoothed out, so that you have no globs of paint that are just gonna sort of make a smush and ruin your whole vibe here. Then I'm gonna go in with the light color, go around the outer edge really quick here. And once you're happy with what you have, which for me, I'm super happy because I really had no expectations. I like a messy sort of look. So you have your look that you want, whatever that is. You're happy with it. You're gonna take your mini mister or spritz of water, whatever type of sprayer you have, and just give it a couple of sprays. The more water you add, the more it might sort of like ball up the ink. And the less you spray, the smoother it will be. Then you take your sheet of paper, and you use this as a stamp or a press, and you just sort of lay it down flat on top of your paper. And the moment of truth, give it a good rub. And then lift. Oh, it's so pretty. Okay, so just like that, I have a really nice print there. So to me, the nice thing about doing it this way rather than, I mean, you could take your paintbrush and just paint onto the paper, but it absorbs so quickly into the paper that you don't really get the movement and the blending that you do when you work on something like a sheet of acetate or a jelly plate or something like that. It gives you more of an ability to blend and move and play with your pattern and colors before you actually set them onto the paper. So that is one complete. You could then, you know, layer this, right? So let this dry, put another layer on top and keep on going. For the sake of the demo, I'm just gonna do one more and just sort of show you how it goes, and then I'll let your imagination go crazy doing whatever you would like. Oh, and the other thing to note, so then once you've done that, you're gonna use this same, like I made all my demos from this morning on the same sheet of acetate. You just wet a paper towel, wipe it off and use it again. No point in wasting. And the paint does not stick to the acetate because the acetate is porous. That's the whole point of this technique. So it's very easy to just wipe it clean and start again. All right, so for the next one, I am going to do a rainbow because rainbows make me happy and are my absolute favorite thing on this planet. So for this one, I chose to use Fired Brick for my red, Rusty Hinge for the orange, Mustard Seed for the yellow, Rustic Wilderness, which is the new green, and it's so pretty, for the green, and Chip Sapphire. So for this one, I put all the blobs down at the same time before I started painting. So I gave it some red, orange, and I'm an eyeballer. These are not gonna be like perfectly exactly the same size blobs. They're not gonna be perfectly spaced out, and I'm super okay with that. Green and blue. Once I've done that, I tried my best. Like, I do want these colors to all blend together. That's the whole point. But at the same time, I don't want them to overpower one another. So I start with my lightest color and then work my way. So I'm gonna start in the middle with the yellow. So I'm gonna get my brush ready. I'm gonna start with my yellow, and I'm just gonna be swishing back and forth. It's like a really messy, free form brush stroke. I'm just back and forth. Again, just making sure, really the only thing I want to be sure of is that there's not any blobs or buildup of paint. Once I've done the yellow, I'm just going to go ahead and grab the orange and sort of blend it down into the yellow and up so it's close to the red. Swish, swish, swish. When I'm happy with that, I'm going to go ahead and grab my red blob and blend those together. Once I've done that, I'm going to try and get as much of the excess off as I can, and then just work my way down so the colors blend into one another. And it's like a natural progression down to the green. Swish, swish, swish of the green till there's no blobs. Then the last one to do is grab the blue here. And when I am happy with that, oh, I got some paint on my finger. All right, so I am super happy with that. I'll slap my paintbrush away here. Same thing, I'm going to spritz it. So it's nice and wet for the transfer. Maybe I will put the white paper down this time so we can see how well that works. So I'm gonna leave my acrylic. This is a test because I have not done it this direction before. I'm gonna put my paper down on top of my print. All right, time for the review. Oh gosh, I love rainbows. Okay, so I did not center it very well, but that is the finished product. And actually, I kind of like it off-centered like that. Like I feel like if I cover this edge and like maybe make it look like it's like dripping down and just didn't make it to the bottom, that's quite pretty. So that is the transfer technique using acrylic paint on acetate and just transferring it onto white cardstock. Now this cardstock also, I should mention, I haven't gessoed it, I haven't primed it. This is just plain old white cardstock. It doesn't take a lot of product or mixed media practice to be able to accomplish this technique. It's super simple, so I know lots of people get intimidated by paints and mixed medias. This is very easy, very user-friendly. You don't have to be scared of trying out this technique, and really like the worst case scenario is it doesn't turn out like you thought, but it's definitely worth a shot. And they're so gorgeous. I wish you could see them in real life. They have so much texture, and because I've used distress paint, you can't see it in the photo, but we all know that distress paint reacts with water. So when you spritz it, you're gonna get, like, you get the texture of that water spritz in your transfer. It's not the easiest to see, but really you should just try it for yourself and then you'll be able to see it in real life. It's gorgeous. They're super fun, super simple backgrounds. Just a little bit of fun for you and beautifulness for your project, and that is my demo. Does anybody have any questions?